medical expenses. For those who are disabled, for those who are elderly, for those who are economically disenfranchised, they have to forego medications to pay their rent, to be able to pay the property taxes that the city keeps increasing. So what does this do? People end up getting sick. People end up risking their health just to be able to keep a roof over their heads. For landlords who continue to raise their rents by making the excuse that property taxes are consistently increasing, all because they want to continue to make a profit. People are getting sick. People end up having to leave their homes. People are having to live in the streets because of the fact that they cannot pay this rent. And yet when we rise up and try to fight it, we're the ones that are considered racist. Let me give you a short history of Chicago. 1940s to 1970s, you have a government program called redlining policies. Made any neighborhood with a certain amount of minorities, black or brown, made them low value, which means any community with X amount of African Americans or Latin Americans was devalued to the point where houses were dirt cheap. The white families who did not want to lose their property values either sold their homes and moved out to the suburbs, which they were subsidized by the federal government, or they just moved out and sold their homes to predatory development companies and real estate agencies, who then rented those same homes at a higher value to those same disenfranchised minorities for a higher profit, keeping them in poverty. This is how the ghettos were created. This is how the barrios were created in the city of Chicago. And this is why we have the so-called segregation in Chicago. So these people move out to the suburbs. These white people, middle-class white people, move out to the suburbs, which were subsidized by the U.S. government. And as an addendum to this redlining policy, housing loans, federal loans that were meant for assistance were given to middle-class white families, but they were barred for minorities, for black and brown people. This forced people to live in poverty. As a result, we live in these ghettos, and crime is inevitable in communities of poverty which have been systematically disenfranchised. The city of Chicago did not pour any money into the neighborhoods during this time. In fact, it tried multiple plans to try to gentrify them over the years. One was shot down. That plan was Plan 21 right here in Pilsen. People rose up in the community, shot it down, fight, because they wanted to turn this community into another commercial Wicker Park. Back before Wicker Park existed, of course. So, fast forward to the 80s. Development corporations all of a sudden realized that it's a lot more inconvenient to live out to the suburbs. Traffic's increasing. People don't want to have to commute all the way from the suburbs to the city anymore. These white class, upper middle class families want to move back into the city. So they realize that since they have more income that has been generated over the decades, they'll cater to them. So then every single development, every single plan has been catered to the affluent white. If you look at any advertisement for developers, you'll see all these advertisements, nothing but young, upper middle class white people. You'll hardly see any minorities in them, because that is not what the intention is for. Because it's not necessarily for them, it's not the racial thing, it's them following the money. They want to go wherever the profit is, because all they care about is profit. So what does that mean? These upper middle class white families start moving into our neighborhoods, which are branded as cultural, as trendy, as hot, by these development corporations, by the city of Chicago, who wants to increase tourism. All of a sudden, working class families are being pushed out of the city. The city of Chicago's population is decreasing as a direct result of this gentrification campaign, also known as Building a New Chicago. It started with Papa Daley, continued with Daley Jr., and it's in fast progress with Rahm Emanuel. The whole purpose is to turn the city of Chicago into a tourist landmark. That's why $50 million was used for Navy Pier. That's why so much money is meant for luxury developments, condos, for upper class businesses, for so-called economic investment, because they don't want the neighborhoods to that be profitable. They want us to be money-making machines for the city. They want to make money off the sales tax. They want to make money off property tax. They want to make money off the income tax, off the upper income people living here. So in order to do that, they have to get rid of the poor. So that's what we're seeing right here. We're seeing here is a process to get the poor to move out of the city of Chicago into the burbs. They don't care where we go to, so long as it's not in the inner city where they can make... Okay, let me just finish up.